Welcome everyone, and thank you so much for coming to the open weekend. I mean, I'm a bit overwhelmed. It's been such a blast. And I'm just amazed that so many of you are still here. Thank you all so much for coming, because you know, it would actually just be a bunch of us standing in a room without all of you. So it's always the people that make anything like this, isn't it? And thank you to these three lovely gentlemen next to me. So this talk is all about like sourcing fibre and different kinds of fibre, various sheep breeds, how it all actually works in the UK. My name is Sonja. I'm one of the directors of John Arbin Textiles, and then I'll start on the end with Aaron here.
Yes.
And Aaron is a head grader from our local grading station. I was calling Aaron a master grader, but I just learned that incorrect. It sounds very grand. So.
Not quite yet.
So Aaron is the master grader. He's kindly agreed to come. Head grader. He kindly agreed to come on a Sunday, and you brought some fleeces with you as well, which is amazing. So you'll give us a bit of a demo too. But this man is a font of knowledge, so do feel free to pop your hand up, ask questions throughout. Otherwise, I'll just let them kind of talk. But if there is anything you specifically would like to ask, this is the opportunity. And then next to me, I've got a man who probably everyone doesn't need introducing. This is definitely... So John obviously set John Arbin Textiles up. Surprise, surprise in the name. Exactly. And what you don't know about sort of spinning a yarn and the technicalities of how to make it work and what twist you need for certain fibres and, you know, how to look at a staple and decide if it'll run on the machines or what kind of thing it should be suited for. So John's the man who knows how to spin a yarn, definitely. And then we've also got Andrew, and Andrew, you are like a proper specialist kind of fibre purchaser, aren't you? So
yeah, we're wool collectors and wool top makers.
Yes, yeah, exactly. And so we get all of our British wool from the wool board through, I mean, not Aaron necessarily, not that master of a grader, but then everything we don't buy through the wool board, there can be a lot of, like there's not always the best transparency with fibre buying because there isn't that much legislation around it because it's not a food product. So it can often be really hard to know where things have come from and what things actually are. And so that's why we buy everything non-British from you, because, you know, you've been doing it for a really long time, you've got the relationships with people, you've actually been overseas and seen the fibre growing and...
Yeah, so we've got the farms and look after it all the way through to the tops.
Exactly, and you're not the first in this is like your family profession, isn't it?
Yeah, grandfather, father.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you couldn't have done anything else, really. Well, you could have, but...
Probably not.
Exactly, and Andrew's very kindly come all the way from Yorkshire as well, so we've got a lot of very kind of knowledgeable folks in this room, so yeah. Do feel free to ask any questions, but I think could we start with grading the fleece?
Yeah, so we'll start with really what we do, British wool. So we process sort wool on behalf of farmers. We work on behalf of the farmers. Our job is to grade wool, put it into different types where it's best suited. Predominantly, we're trying to make as much value in this product, sustainable, and give it back to the farmer. So we grade it, market it, and sell it for the farmer. But our main role is to try and get as much money back to the farmer, really, for all the hard work they put in, and then we do our bit of a depot. So this is a fleece. So when you're grading, you stood on a table, there could be 20, 30 different fleeces all on the table. We sort every fleece by hand. So then I would look at this fleece. So first thing I'm looking at the colour, As you can see, it's a nice white, really nice white colour, so that's a good sign. It means you can put it into the better type grades. So the colour is one of the main things we look for straight away, and then we go on to the staple, which is this, which is all over the fleece. So what we would do is we would pick a staple, and now we're testing it for quality. So that's strength in this staple, and then also we're sort of judging the fineness as we're touching that staple to decide whether really what type of wool it's going to be, type of grade, sorry, it's going to go into. Basically the end product, so fine type wools will be used for knitting yarns, and then you go all up the other end to sort of naturally coloured wools, or a Scottish Blueface wool, which is really coarse and really hairy, very different from these two, but that will be used in clothing, but also carpets. So within the grades of British wool, there are many varieties and uses for these products. So all we aim to do at British Wool is grade it to a very high standard, so that when the wool's sold by British Wool, they know the quality they're getting, because every fleece that comes through our doors is hand sorted by skilled graders. And yeah, so now what we do at British Wool, everything that comes through the door is now traceable back to the farmer, which is a new scheme we've been running, implemented. So that means that you can pretty much buy a bale, or not just a bale, but buy 100,000 kilos of wool.
It's us.
Yeah.
We buy a bale.
Yeah.
You use the traceability though.
Yeah, we are.
So we're trying to add value to this product, so hopefully the traceability factor will encourage the buyers to, you know, pay more for the product. In return, that will go back to the farmer.
And it should be nice for the farmer as well, because they're well aware their product is as well as the market. So that's
so this is the thing. It's all about trying to add value to this product, and you know, by grading it, sorting it into the better types, you can do that. So that's what we aim to do at British Wool, really.
So what grade have we got here then?
So this would be a 473. So this is an Exmoor Mule. So you can see this would be a cross.
Badger's Exmoor Blueface.
Yeah.
So, this is in most of our yarn ranges, and it's just what's on our doorstep.
Yeah, so basically the Exmoor Mule is a cross between a Blueface Leicester Ram and an Exmoor Horn Sheep. It's brilliant for the area it lives in, really good at looking after the lambs, really good milk, and also produces a really big fleece. Obviously farmers now don't
get half decent meat animals.
Yeah, they get a decent meat animal, but they're not really doing it for the wool, they're doing it for the lambs and the other things. But if you can add value to this as well, then obviously that's a really good thing. But this is a sort of breed that's right on our doorstep in South Molton and Exmoor, the Exmoor Mule. And this is a Jacob. You can see it's naturally coloured, been around for hundreds of years in the UK, this breed. You do see specialist flocks. This is, you know, a nice sort of medium style fleece, but this is only, there's only one sort of grade this will go in, and that's a 351. That's where it goes with all the other Jacobs. I think we have about 85 different grades of wool at South Molton, and that will vary throughout the UK, what sheep they keep, the landscape it's brought up in or lives on. So yeah, I mean, probably have over 85 different grades, and you could have 40 from one bag of wool if the farmer keeps a big selection of different types of sheep.
it's a very involved work, they're going through all the fleeces and bags.
It's it was a 5-year training course to become a grader. So I think we have a drink.
But you never stop learning though, do you? It's very subjective, isn't it? So you can't sort out.
So as long as you're sort of grading the wool to the right type, not necessarily the breed of sheep, it's the type of wool and its best use for that fleece. So when you're looking at it, you're not looking at, it's a Blueface Leicester. You're judging it on that fleece at that time, probably in about 3 seconds, because we've got to grade about 2,500 fleeces a day.
2,500 a day.
So we should be grading about 5 tonne of wool a day.
So you grade one entire fleece, it doesn't get broken down into sections?
No, you grade that fleece and then you chuck it into the baskets we have around us, which will all be different grades.
It's not 5 tons by yourself, how many people work?
No, honestly, that is the figure they like. Each grader to push through is 5 tonne.
A day?
A day, yeah.
Blimey, they're working hard down there.
Yeah. But that's to keep up with the demand of what British Wool need throughout our network of depots. They need 600,000 kilos of wool a week to supply the buyers. within the UK. So that's what we have to meet to fulfil our auction and sales. So yeah, so we you know.
But there's been a lot of news recently, like the last few years, hasn't there, about the bottom falling out of the wool market, and not being able to sell it for the price it costs to.
So basically, what we do at British Wool is the wool sold at an auction, so we can limit the amount of wool that goes in the market at any one time, but also create a demand for it. So during your busy periods, you can't just probably influx the market with millions of kilos of wool. We do it through 20 sales throughout the year to try and create that demand, and then through the auction hope that they will have to bid higher. So that is probably the fairest way of doing it. You can't say someone's going to make 80p at an auction when it only makes 50.
Yeah.
So
But the other thing with it is there are some things that you can do that are quite straightforward that then will really increase the value of your fleece. So if you kind of look after the fleece and think about the fleece while the sheep are wearing their fleece, then there are little things that you can do that then will increase the value. So that's why Aaron does so many different grades, because it's about getting the ones that can cost more separated from the ones that won't cost so much, so that then the ones that you can fetch more price for, like vegetable matter is one of the worst things. So if something gets really covered in
so if it's straw and sawdust and stuff that contaminates the fleece, then there's basically the buyers who buy the wool in the processing part are going to have to do more to that wool, and it's going to cost them more to process it. It doesn't come out in the process, so obviously we have to sort of penalise the farmers, which we don't like doing, but also we can educate them and sort of tell them how they can add more value to their wool, which is also another part of our job.
But that can also go down to the weather though, can't it? Because if it's hard winter, then
a lot of things have an
keep the
effect.
sheep in, so they get a lot of straw and contamination. So same with long dry summers and the grazing's not so good. That affects the clippage years, all sorts of things.
It affects the quality of the wool year to year.
It's a natural product, isn't it? So, like all of us, one year you're feeling okay, the next year you might be feeling a bit ropey, The sheep are the same.
You've probably got a good handle generally on the whirlpool prices because you're buying from different what's going on there?
I mean, with British wool, I'd have said the majority of it's going to go into carpet, so it just becomes just a normal commodity really. And because then it's competing with wool out of New Zealand, out of the Middle East, out of everywhere, and the prices are pretty depressed to be fair.
What's brought that on then? Is it just general
You were
recession?
telling me yesterday how much it used to cost back in the 50s, weren't you?
And that was obviously because back in the 50s it was not as many, not because it didn't have like today, you've got a lot more man-made fibres out there, and I mean for the cat, for clothing, etc. But today for the carpet sector goes through a lot of problems with the housing market, and sometimes during COVID it went through massive problems because a lot of people goes into contract carpeting for your hotels, your cruise ships, casinos, and all those won't get the footfall. So we had a bit of a dip, which is sad, because obviously when we talk about the farmers doing more work to it, I mean, what's the incentive if you're getting very little in your place? Because for them, really, it's a byproduct, unless it's honest.
Yes.
So it is difficult. It is difficult to incentivise the farmers to do more than they're actually doing. You know, I mean, at the moment, I mean, they'll just shake off the shitty bits and then stick it in put it in the after they've sheared it and put it into the bag and then send it into the board.
It's doing things like what John Harvey Textiles is doing.
Adding value to it.
Adding value like this, Exmoor Mule, and really badging it as Exmoor Blueface. I mean, to the point where people thought I'd actually created a new breed of sheep.
Not personally.
I won't go. You've seen them before, actually. But that ends up then, it puts a demand on this. And it makes people think about that type of grade a bit more, and those sort of things help. Although in a small way, but in a marketing way, it's massive. I mean, we'll never be up to the volume, I say those sort of things all help. It's all a marketing tool, and then the wool board's able to then move on. But sadly, then this price will go up in the auction. So
It will.
Is there anything that can be done or needs to be done in terms of encouraging consumers to use natural product over and above man-made products.
It's just trying to educate them,
Yeah.
and it's like something that won't happen overnight because, like you said, there's lots of man-made fibres. You can go to any supermarket, Primark, and pick your clothes, or go to a carpet store and get what you want. But you know, if somebody can.
Well, exactly. I think people are starting to be a bit more
Yeah.
switched on to the fact, especially like microplastics you hear about a lot. So I do think, like, if you look at the longer game, like, you know, it should start, I mean, it has to start picking up again, or we're all going to drown under synthetic fibres.
When I first entered textiles to where we are now, and the attitudes towards synthetics, the attitudes towards synthetics were they the wonder fibre, and you could mimic wool, and why would you want to buy wool? Because you can make it cheaper, and look how we can engineer these fibres, microfibre, make these amazing towels that will dry your itch super quick, you know, but it's bad for the environment. And I've seen the change in the attitude and the sustainability and the organic movement, and you know, now people's attitude towards plastic is very much bad, you know, but I think maybe people aren't making the connection that plastic means plastic yarn, and i.e. textile, they think plastic is something quite hard and don't think it's probably your textile.
What they get in the supermarket like this.
But I think that's changing. Well, it's education, isn't it? So.
I always think of fleeces being a very seasonal thing. Like predominantly shorn in the summer, aren't they? Some people shear in the winter. So do you store shiploads of them and then get them out in regular?
Yeah, so what we have to do, obviously, we've got 4 graders in the depot. We can't grade all the wool that comes in at once, and our area covers right from Land's End up to sort of the outskirts of Greater London, cut off from Oxford, South Gloucestershire.
Huge,
yeah. There's a depot in Ashford and Kent, but that sort of covers the south east. So we've got a really big chunk of the south.
Is that because it's a lower pop? But there's quite a lot of sheep around here as
Yeah,
well.
it's quite good.
How did you end up with such a big kind of catchment area?
Unfortunately, depots had to close and stuff, and cost saving. You know, we're a business, but we're a cooperative. We work on behalf of the farmers, but obviously you've still got to have a good business model for it to work. And unfortunately, places have shut. You know, it's sort of.
We've lost Liscard.
Yeah. So we've lost the one in Cornwall, but what we can do is store as much wool in a dry, safe environment. Get it off the farm so that it's not in the farmer's way. They're not having to move it. It's not getting wet. We can store it in the later months of the year. We can grade it and process it. So it's sort of
So when did you start taking the early wool in? Was it May or?
Yeah, we had a really early start. I mean.
Because it depends on the weather, of course.
Yeah. So it was quite cold, April,
Yeah.
going into first week of May, and then all of a sudden it got really warm.
Yeah.
And then obviously we've had a good run of weather. So if farmers can get their flocks, get their sheep shorn early, they've got plenty of time to be doing other stuff, so they can get it in out of the way. It's a job done.
And how was it for getting shearers? Has it been quite easy?
I think it's been difficult the last couple of years.
Right.
Definitely during COVID, because obviously you get a lot of overseas shearers that come through. But British will also have a training programme where they train young farmers and next generation shearers and wool handlers, so you can educate that way. You know, shearers and wool handlers. Yeah.
Do you know John Richards? I was talking to him the other day.
Yeah.
Big farmer.
Yeah.
And he was saying about getting hold of shearers. It was A, the cost, and B, getting hold of them.
Yeah.
It's shot up. So he's having a bit of a nightmare.
Not everybody wants to be shearer. I mean, it's a hard job.
He said he used to have no problem at all. He used to do that, it just happened, he didn't have to think about it. He said, no, it's an absolute nightmare. So.
What's the impact of Brexit, getting labourers and that sort of stuff?
Not a great deal for British wool, because the majority stays in stays in the UK for carpet wool. We did export quite a bit to China at one stage, probably 7 or 8 years ago, but I think that was merely for the processing, because it was cheaper to process over there than what it was over here. But they've sort of dulled down their sort of buying from British wool. Plus they've got New Zealand and Australia right on that side of where they're too. So
haven't they got a massive breeding program going on as well in China? Some of us don't.
I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I mean, they want to cut it,
Well,
why not?
I mean, they've got a long way to go, but I think they're really productive.
yeah, I've heard that as well. But Yeah, so majority of the British wool does stay in the UK, but yeah, and it gets processed in Bradford, 2 mills up there that run, and they're sort of going 24/7, I think.
I think they've got a,
Yeah, they are.
They're-
Mills in the UK are flat out. I mean, you're trying to get anything. If you wanted to get commission spin, it's not easy, is it? Or
well, even on the scouring side, I think they can do, I think it's about 1 million kilos a week
Yeah,
in scouring, 1 million kilos a week.
but they're big systems.
yeah, they're
large.
mass produce, aren't they?
Yeah.
Huge.
It's like, it used to make me laugh when people used to approach me with alpaca fleeces and they've got about 10. And they go, surely they can scour these very quickly. I go, it disappeared. You really don't understand. So you go in the bar and be
The
lucky
bath
to
is
see
like
me
bigger
come out
than
the other
this
end.
room,
Nothing. They go, no. You know, I think you should let your bath. Yeah.
What's the range in weight for a fleece?
So we average it around 2 kilos, sort of most fleeces. This one here would probably be up more around 4 kilos.
Yeah, that is big.
Yeah, this is often, you know.
Oh, look, you found some brand.
I'm doing a bit of
Gardening.
What's the
price?
So at the moment, for sort of most core grades, which is sort of your main bulk types that we get within the UK clear, it's around sort of 30 pence a kilo. So probably
30p?
30
That's
a
net, that's
kilo.
net, no, that's not the auction price.
No, that's what.
No, auction price is higher.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you just
in case you
pay.
want to become a wool buyer, it's not 30p.
No,
It's not.
What's the maximum you pay for this? Probably 150?
No.
No, I don't
It has to. I wonder if it's in
Oh,
the,
yes, it's the, yes.
if it goes into the
That's
second
right.
Blueface, go
Ah, yeah.
125.
if it's in seconds.
Yeah. But I
Because
mean,
if it's got enough Blueface character, isn't it?
Yeah.
This,
I mean, it
this
looks
goes what
like
they call
that.
second Blueface because
So,
the breeding's that good and
yeah.
it's looking like a Blueface Leicester sheep, fleece. So
yeah, because the reason why these fetch a premium as well is because the first Blueface grade, which is probably 3 times dearer than this.
Yeah, that's really
if this comes up
smart.
fine, people will actually resort it and take out the Blueface from this to put in the Blueface because there will be some Blueface fleeces in there. Because there will be some fine ones.
Yeah.
and does the crimp affect the grading?
The crimp is what you're looking
Yeah,
for.
so
The crimp is
the
good.
crimp-
Yeah. So,
Yeah, the crimp within the staple gives it a style,
Yeah.
and sort of you look into that. Yeah, you can actually see if there's been if there's a break in the staple. That means the sheep's been under a bit of stress. Could be through lambing or it's been ill. You can actually see a natural break in the fibre where it's grown, become stressed, and then started growing. So that staple become weak. So you can pretty much
it's
tell.
really visible, isn't it?
It's really visible.
Thin, isn't
So
it?
then you have to look to putting that into sort of like a lower quality grade, what we would call like a number 2. So not number 1 quality, but still a good fleece. It's, yeah, they can still plenty of
Like a cash grade or something like
yeah,
that.
what we would call cash, but we're not allowed to. We've got new terminology.
Oh, sorry. Sorry, rewind that.
So we use sort of number 1, meaning within certain breeds of wool, there are about 4 or 5 different sort of grades within that. So you've got your sort of number 1 grades, which is top quality, number 2, and then you've got
yeah. But that's what the traceability that you've just. Is this the first year you're traceable?
So I think it's quite a new system that was sort
Yeah.
of implemented and sort of
Yeah.
invented for British wool, but it's still quite a unique thing that we
Yeah,
do.
and at the moment it's optional, isn't
Yeah.
it? So, but we do decide to pay it on everything. And is it an extra 55?
I'm not aware of.
I think it's
any
an
of the
extra
pricing.
55p per kilo. But Helen advised the fibre, so I might be slightly incorrect. But it's around that, and then I think 45 of it goes to the farmer, and then
It's a
some of
pretty
it is
sensible.
obviously processing costs. So, but and at the moment we're not really doing anything with it as such with that information, just because we've been a bit busy. But at some point we will do something with the information. But for us, it's more just about being able to give the farmer an extra 45p per kilo, And when you know that the price is only £1, then actually that's a real significant. So at the moment it is optional, and I think it was first brought in because the mattress and duvet people, were they the ones starting it?
So there's
But
quite
it's
a few
great, and
small
I think
businesses now.
now West Yorkshire Spinners are switching to it as well, so it probably will be something that, like in the craft industry, you start hearing more and more about. So, but it's just a clever way of trying to get the farmer that little bit more money as well. So.
And then could you put like a QR code on, you can zap it with the
Yeah.
phone and then you can see go back to the phone. And
Exactly. So if we spent 30 grand building a nifty system on our website, we could then tell you exactly where it was from. But this is why we haven't done anything with the information, because we're a little small for that.
Visions with knitters with their scale, a fine scale.
Yeah, exactly.
There might be some funding maybe from the
Yeah, well, you know, for us it's really more, I think the thing for us is, you know, we talk a lot about where the fibre's from anyway, and we put the breed on the label, and so I think people trust that, you know, we're not lying to you about what we put in the wool. So for us really it's more about the farmer, and obviously at some point we will, you know.
It's a great marketing tool though, I mean, for like
It's great, and I
textiles
think
in general, for that
if you're a big
topic.
enough operation, like you're making duvets and mattresses, and you do have enough money to build a QR code system and get it on the website, I think it's amazing. Like it's just, people want to feel that connection, don't they? So,
Definitely.
It's nice to know exactly where things have come from.
definitely.
Everyone's asking
Do you
that
have
question.
to educate them? Is it up to yourself to educate the farmers? You were saying about giving them advice, but if you educate them to say, oh, down the line you could get an extra 45p a kilo.
Well, it's at the
They
buyer's
go earn more money, they don't do it.
discretion.
That's-
So
that's the key,
that is
yeah.
at the buyer's discretion. So you buy it at auction and then they ask you if you want to pay the traceability uplift. So it's entirely down to us rather than the farmer, because at the end of the day, the priority, and quite right too, is about getting it sold, because otherwise you get no money. So, but I mean personally I think it would be nice if it stopped being at the buyer's discretion, but also 45p is a lot if you're working at an industrial scale with very tight margins, so I imagine it will remain like that for a long time.
Yeah, because for certain sectors of the trade, I mean, working on
They
a tiny
wouldn't-
percentage.
yeah.
So how much uptake is there on that?
I couldn't say. I don't think any of us could say. It's early days as
It
well.
was
It's
sort of
very
run last
early
summer,
days.
and then, you know, some of the wool was traceable, but from, you know, this season 2023 going onwards, all the wool that comes through will be traceable.
Yeah.
So it's just a case of waiting to see and hoping that, you know, that creates value.
Yeah.
No glitches in the system yet, you know?
We've done all that last year.
But at the end of the day, it's that story, you know, that's important for people. So I would imagine, like a fair number of folks will go for it.
And I can see some blue dye in there. So what happens to that in the process if you're going to have
Well,
it undyed?
Is it called top-in or something, isn't it?
Oh, that's
Yeah, I know, but that's the blue colours on the
Yeah.
So this to us isn't really a big problem. Obviously farmers need to mark their sheep because they need to know where they are. Most Brits will recommend certain types of mark that they know will come out in the scouring process. So if they can use them, then they I mean, if it's excessive, if this was all blue, then obviously we'd have to downgrade it. But you know,
Sometimes people do go for it.
then I think maybe the grandkids get hold of the spray cans.
Oh, yeah.
It does, I mean, it is designed to come out. But also when you process and blend, when you start blending these fibres, that disappears, absolutely vanishes.
Well, they call it fugitive,
Fugitive.
because when you wash it, it runs away.
Yeah.
No, that's what we're doing actually. That is the water.
Did you start that off?
Yeah, I just made it.
But it does, I mean, it just vanishes. You won't see it. And then most of your yarn, you're over dyeing as well.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
you
We
know,
pay
so-
to make it that colour again,
Yes.
is what
Yeah.
happens.
When it doesn't come out.
But then also so in your processing, you're doing less to the wool. You're trying to keep it its natural state, so you're not using heavy peroxides to bleach stuff out, because they can do that and make it pure white and things like that.
But once you've carded something, a little bit of something, it spreads, you can't see it.
No.
Yeah, I mean, if it's some hand carding, it just disappears, you know.
Yeah. You could throw the darkest colour in, you won't see it coming out.
But that's why I say this Jacob and like all dark fibre is not worth as much as the paler stuff, because you can't dye it, and obviously the majority of wool is dyed. I think it's amazing. I love it. I love dyeing over the coloured fibre. I think it lends things a real depth of tone. And someone told me actually that it's starting to be a bit more well valued, the dark.
They're trying to start, I think British Wool are trying to find niche markets, new markets, and so there's a breed called Swarbles, and the colour is jet black, lovely fleece, similar style to this, but it'll be jet black. They found a sort of market for that, so if if you can find these markets that are willing to pay more for that product, then obviously the value will go back to the farmer in the end. It's just trying to find new ways of adding value all the time. I think that's what British Wool really do. I think so. I think you're right, John. I think it's making suits or yarn for suits.
They're buying up loads of it.
Yeah, they were.
Would they ever use coloured fleeces in like carpets and mattress stuffing and so on?
I think what I've heard they use in
all to be white.
Well, for the Jacob, I mean, the nice thing about that is you can sort it into about 4 different shades. So you can have all those natural shades where you're not having to dye anything. So for carpets, it's ideal, really, and it's got the bulk. So I think they did that with the Herdwicks. Because the Herdwicks make very strong carpets.
They did a great master.
Yeah, basically, they did, but that was because it was doing with the Lake District and you had the Herdwick and all that. They did push it. So I think with the marketing, I think you're right. I find natural carpets are beautiful, papers and things like that are beautiful, all the natural shades in them. So yeah, I think it is, it's just convincing people that's what they want. And I mean, with a wool carpet, something like a Herdwick or a Jacob carpet, I mean, it's going to last forever. But I think that was the problem, I think, in the past, because people wanted to change their interior. We always, but I mean, carpets, I was brought up, because obviously being in textiles, we always had wool carpets, we'd never have anything else.
Can you imagine?
And then after a while, you did get fed up with them, but they were there forever. I mean, they were expensive, but they worked out cheaper. They worked out cheaper. So,
And people talk about it not being so good, perhaps. I mean, obviously people have different budgets and so on, but sometimes people push back against buying from, say, crops where it's like mass-produced, cheaper wool. What has changed in that process that makes it not such a great thing, perhaps sustainability-wise, to be buying from that?
Well, I think that's anything about somebody else's yarn personally, but I would just say it's just a different, regarding the quality of the yarn or regarding the price of the yarn.
Well, I hear people say that it's just not such a good thing to subscribe to, because you're encouraging a process which isn't so ethical.
In terms of sort of in terms of the animal, the sheep are actually looked after.
Yeah, do you think it's the animal welfare?
I think, well, in this country, I think the animal welfare is exemplary, and it's
Because of death and everything as well, it's backing it up.
It's not ruling out all practices, and there's always good and bad in everything. I think as a sustainable fibre, I think it's going to carry on. I think what people have to recognise, if you're going to go completely plant-based, then you've got to give over a lot of land to grow crop as well, and all the inherent problems with that. Then you're not, just stopping one thing and then it's all rosy plant-based. When you take bamboo, for instance, the legislation over bamboo is appalling, and so I would say 99% of your bamboo is coming out of China, and they are taking up land to grow bamboo, and then processing bamboo is a chemical process. It's not, you're not pulling out, retting out.
It's
the same. If I said viscose to you, you'd go, "Ew." Well, that's basically what bamboo is, because they are dissolving it, and then in a heavy sodium hydroxide solution, and then it's
It's extruded.
Extruded into an acid bath, which is hydrochloric or hydrogen sulfide, and it produces loads of bad gas within it as well. Hydrogen disulfide, which is really toxic. And in China, they haven't got the same controls and legislation, so
And they
this
don't
is
have
going
the
out into
same,
the environment.
like, health and safety in terms of the workers.
But you can get close to some bamboo where it actually, they reuse the chemicals and stuff like that, so it's kind of greener and then more sense about the land. So it's a balance. So if you say, yeah, stop, animal welfare, do this, bamboo is brilliant. Look at where you get it from, ask the question, and I guarantee most of sort of these so-called ethical textiles are not what they're being.
I think one of the things for me personally, especially now that it sort of belongs to me, is the way that, like, when you look at the price of something, actually if something seems like a bargain, it's just a bargain to you personally when you're standing in the shop thinking if you're going to buy it. But actually what that means is it has been really not a great time for everyone on the other side of that transaction who's helped produce it, And I think that's true of like any product around, like, it takes an incredible amount, if anyone's been on a mill tour, it takes an incredible amount of like labour, and Aaron's just described to you how they sort everything, so nothing just magically appears, and I think if something is not costing a lot, then that means that the process has been unkind and squeezed either the land or the labour, like.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to buy a pineapple, and it was 95p.
Yeah.
And it's like, how can you produce a pineapple
For
in the
95p.
UK for 95p?
Yeah.
It wasn't on offer or reduced
Yeah.
it was 90p for a pineapple, and it was like, I don't want to buy it because it's too cheap.
I think that's the thing, is we've all just got used to not paying a lot of money for things, like definitely in Europe and in the West, we're just used to things being really affordable and having more things than we need. And like, actually, on one level that's great, but also like that is not really a sustainable way to behave going forward. So, I mean, that would be my answer. So it's not necessarily targeted at any particular yarn company, and I think it's not even really about the yarn industry, it's like about the world we all decide to live in, So.
But things are changed a little bit.
Yeah, definitely, and there's options now, aren't there?
But a bit more information as well, that out of other areas, parts of the world, like I said, here is very good. We know the system, and there's things in place with DEFRA for animal welfare, and obviously to make sure people are paid a fair amount of money, whatever they do. Not like in some other countries. So there's a new system which is RWS, so it's responsible wool sourcing. That's the next thing to come, really. Whereas in the past we had like GOTS, like organic, you thought, well, you could trace that back with all the systems. But the RWS is nice because the system starts where you've got your land, and then you farm to what land you've got, so you don't overfarm it, so you count the sheep that you're going to have on it, there's got to be water for the animal, and then you get on the next you go on to the workers that work there, the children have to be educated, they get an amount of wage, and that's the thing that's coming next. Within.
And you've seen that globally?
We're seeing more interest on the RWS.
What does it stand for?
Pardon?
What does it stand for?
Responsible wool sourcing.
Okay.
And it's a system. I mean, you have to pay into the system, and but there's people that have always adhered to those principles, but they haven't had the certificate. It's like people have been organic, but they haven't had the GOTS certificate. Because So on the so that's the beauty of the RWS really, because it makes sure that everybody's looked after within that chain, and it's really being pushed back by some of the big retailers, because they don't want to be attacked, obviously, because if they're selling products that are low priced, coming from countries where the practices are not the same as here, they can defend it. Because it shows the certificate, everybody within the chain is being looked after. There's no child labour there. There's nobody's being exploited. The animals are being looked after. There's been access to food, access to water, and just the basic principles of what you've got here, really. That's something that's quite
really interesting. It's almost sort of gone full circle, because I went on mill tour in Norway for an old mill that's not used anymore. And the owner had paid his workers more than the going rate.
Yeah.
They gave them more housing and decent lunch breaks and everything. So
Yeah. Like I said, the thing is, just as a global market, if everybody does that, then everybody's in the same market, you know, and you don't get people from overseas, well, from other countries or coming with cheaper prices, you know, forcing everybody else to go down to a lower level. It's best to force everybody up to a higher level so everybody can, it's all sustainable, everybody's paid well, everybody can afford to live. So that was, yeah.
On a different topic, Aaron, what is the strangest thing you've ever found? That's what I want to know. To get a bit silly. Me just popping out of a bale and everything.
I found a pair of ladies' underwear.
Did you?
In the wool bag. Yeah. That was quite bizarre.
That's a very exciting shearing day, isn't it?
Yeah, I would say so. I found somebody's engagement ring.
Oh,
Did they get it back?
Yeah, they
Did you have a
did.
name?
We posted it. They knew they'd lost it. They rang the depot and said, just by any chance, you know, I've lost my engagement ring, and luckily I was grading, turning the fleece over.
Did they have to write an essay first about what they were doing?
No, we just sent it off back to them, and they were very grateful.
Oh, good.
But you find all sorts, shearing hand pieces that the shearers have put down, and then the wool handler's come on, done the bag up, and then he's gone, well, where's my shearing hand piece? you find all sorts, and so, the problem is sort of needles and stuff that they treat the sheep with, and then they just chuck it in the wool. If you're grading the wool because your hands are around it, so also sharp, rusty objects that are chucked in or just get picked up with the wool. You know, I've had to have a tetanus update in the last 10 years. You know, but it's just, and obviously your vegetable matter, you do get some, you think, how can a sheep go for a tree like that?
Well, that was Bramble.
Or was it in there?
But
Blackthorn's the worst probably to get.
because it's spiky.
It's poisonous, but it really does sting for a good bit afterwards. See, it's part of the job. You just sort of, it's a bit of excitement, I suppose.
Somehow we're very grateful to you.
How did you get involved in the first place? Because you're obviously quite a young man, and is it in the family grading them?
Not grading. My grandfather was a sheep shearer around Exmoor, sort of very well known, a very good sheep shearer. Then sort of going out with him when I was younger, and my dad, and just sort of, I suppose, had an interest that I didn't even know I had. And then the depot in South Molton were after some summertime workers to help with the busy season. I went down there, and sort of 17 years later, here I am.
But you love it, don't you? I can tell.
I do, I have. If you're passionate about something, then you sort of appreciate the job you do and the hard work the farmers do, and then the next, if you see the process of what the farmers have to do to get that to us, what we have to do to get it, even to a state where it can be processed, and then it's got to go to the next stage. There's a huge amount of work that goes in by highly skilled people. Every bit of that sort of change, that's the amazing part, really. You're part of that, but you're really highly skilled, and everyone along that chain is highly skilled.
And as a spinner buying your wool, you've got confidence in what you buy, because if they went directly to the farm, you're going to get it warts and all, and we don't want that. We want them to do a professional job on it. We've got absolute faith in what we're buying. So then the quality of the yarn, that's it. It's not a magic system. You can't create quality.
When you
Sorry, I think this lady had her hands up. No worries. Fire away.
In your introduction, you mentioned that John knows everything about twists and
Twisting.
Every twist and turn.
Get him on the dance floor.
At lunchtime, my friend and I were looking at two skeins of yarn, and they look like they have different amount of twist on them. One. Thank you.
One of the 900, it looks like it's spun less tightly than begonia.
between the two different types,
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. Because your fibre will handle differently.
Oh yeah, that,
So the merino takes a lot less twist. If you over twist it, it goes really snarly in the singles. So then try to fold stuff it doesn't relax out like your Devonia will. The Devonia will take a lot more twist. It's just down to the inherent nature of that fibre and the way it handles through the machinery. So you compensate for that, and that only comes through from having done it loads of times and knowing that type of fibre blend. So you can add a fibre to it to lessen that effect and change the twist, and then know what twist, reverse twist you need to put in it to compensate for that when you actually fold the final yarn, which will then, its actual appearance will look different. But then the fibre will bloom differently as well as it relaxes. So, it's just down to that different nature of fibre. Gives you a different look.
And also, I suppose with the dyeing process, that might change the colour.
Yeah, lots of things. I mean, if you superwash stuff, you're changing the nature of, chemically changing the nature of the fibre. So obviously it's going to have a result on the actual end product. So it all dyes will affect the handle as well. I mean, in its purest state, that's the best handle run by hand on in the field of fibre. So whatever you do to it thereon, you can put a lot more twist in it, make it very hard. So you do that if you're doing a sock yarn, you put more twist in to make it more durable. Less twist makes it softer and not as durable. So.
More comfortable sometimes.
And more comfortable, yeah. I mean, if you get something close to the skin, you're going to use a finer fibre and you can put less twist into it. It's a softer handle, but not to the detriment of its performance. So.
Thank you.
And your question?
I'm just wondering, when you're storing the wool, surely that's done over months and stuff. Do you actively do anything to keep moths out, or is it climatised?
Does that a lot?
So obviously the wool is stored in bags which are done up, and it's sort of, we don't tend to have any problems with moths. It's not really an issue. Not really an issue for us.
Plus it's going to go through the scouring, so
But they're in super high density press bale, don't they?
You can pack things like huge.
it's like concrete.
So then the moth couldn't get in.
Well, they 300, 400 kilo bales? Depends on the type of fibre.
Yeah, so it's probably more like probably a ton in one of these compacted bales with numerous sheets, or it could all be one farmer's from one farmer. It could be 3 bags for Mr. Jones, 2 bags for Mr. Smith, and then it just gets weighed, marked up, paperwork. We know what's in that bundle. We can grade that as for it. So everything's sort of stored, so we know whose wool it is, when it's come in, the weight of the wool. So when we grade
How much space does it take up before and after the compaction, just so folks can get a sense of it?
Fill this room, isn't it?
It would fill the room.
We've got a reasonable size depot, and it would take up probably nearly half of it, I suppose, of the wool that we store.
Yeah.
So
the depot is maybe 10 times as big as the mill, would you say, our little mill? If not bigger, it's pretty palatial in there. It's pretty impressive.
Easily.
Yeah, I would say good 2 football pitches.
Did anybody go past it on the tour?
We did,
It's like a cathedral of wool.
But it goes very far back, you know.
Maybe more too.
Probably, I wouldn't want to run up and down it every day.
That's the sorting factor in the wool, isn't it?
It's an amazing place to see in action, especially now when it's all going off. Massive, how Richard stacks those bows.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, everyone down there's probably been down there for quite a long time, so that probably says a lot about the company, that you keep staff, and then ultimately people develop an interest, or they're really sort of conscious about their work. So it all has a really good impact on how sort of British Wool forms. You've not got a high turnover of staff, you've got sort of a core group of staff, and then you hire staff when you need extra help, and then it sort of keeps it all sort of people that have an interest and have a care about their job. So that works. It's another benefit of British Wool, really.
Yeah, I remember the time I've been using it for those years. It's always been the same faces down there.
Yeah, once you sort of become a grader, because it takes, it took me 5 years, they've condensed it down to a 3-year course now. It's kind of, once you're in that job, you kind of just, it is a job for life. You sort of learn off of people who, you can read books about wool, characteristics of different types of breed, but really the only way you can do this job is by handling lots of wool and seeing the different various, forms of fleeces and grading. When somebody's been doing it for 45 years and they're passing their knowledge down to you, you've got to listen, you take it on board.
It's actually very similar, I suppose, to a hairdresser, because when my hairdresser, during COVID and stuff, he said, "Oh my God, you're not very well, your hair's really..." And I was going, "What?" And then, another couple of cuts down, he said, "Oh, you're better now." And I'm going, "I can't believe that you're giving me..." But hearing you talk about the fleeces, you then suddenly think that it's obviously a similar sort of... because you're handling natural fibres.
You can tell if the animals have stress by the way the wool reacts. And also you can have a breeder sheep that's more suited for a lowland area, but it's kept up higher ground, up on a hill, the wool behave differently because of that environment. So you're sort of all the time, you're sort of thinking every fleece you're grading, it's where can I put this, where's it best suited? So it goes in that right grade, so then it's going to be perfect for the end use after us. We can't really afford to be, it can be subjective, but the standard set, this is how you do it, and then within that there are ranges that you can sort of disagree on or sort of ask somebody's opinion, but
it's a quick process.
It's about 3 seconds.
You have to know.
So when you do your training, are you sent out to various, do you...
No,
it all comes to you.
So basically, so the graders, you work with whatever grader's the most experienced or the head grader, and then you pretty much stand next to him and you watch him and you grade wool and you get stuff wrong, and then you learn from that, So it is literally a very hands-on sort of training course. Obviously, now you have to learn a bit more about. You should be learning about the company, what it does, and because also you need to sort of be able to explain to farmers the reason why we do it, and that's also quite an important part now, is to try and sort of help educate or ask questions and try and help them in any way you can, really.
And the other part of the board, of course, is that you sell them throughout the year, so you're giving a service to
you're storing it.
So they're storing it and then they're auctioning it. So I think, how many auctions do you have a year? 20 auctions.
Yeah. Which is great for us as well, because it means that we don't have to plan we can then be like, oh gosh, we needed this and we didn't realise, and then you can have it. Because it's really hard for producers if you've only got one time of year and everyone's fighting over the same, and then that's it. And if you've missed it, then you've missed it,
Because you're planning well in advance.
Yeah, well, we do our best.
Well, I mean,
Helena's on it.
You've got to predict what's going to happen over the next.
But you can't ever
year
get
and a
it
half,
100% right. So it's really nice having that little, wiggle room, I guess.
So why do you think the explosion happened? Because during the 70s we had some good wool. Then in the 80s it was just like acrylic. It was just like, and I was brought up, like you were saying, learning to knit when you were really young. But then suddenly it's gone mad. And it's exciting. But what was the catalyst that happened in that time?
The organic movement. The whole sustainable organic movement. Questioning where it's coming from.
So there is hope.
Yeah. What I would say, because we're pretty much done, but I think if anyone wants to come and actually touch it, John's been fiddling with it the whole so please do come over and
wash your hands
have
off,
a feel. Do wash your hands afterwards.
Eat or drink or something.
There's quite a few sinks in the loo, but feel free to come over and have a feel. So this one here is the Exmoor Blueface, which we put in pretty much everything, at least a little bit. It's just a really nice general wool. And then the other one is Jacob, and we've just bought a bale of Jacob, which is very exciting. So the first time we have used it this time around at the mill it's in the open weekend special. So it's this fleece here blended with merino is what the open weekend special is. But come have a feel, give it a squish. and I hope you've all enjoyed it.
Thank you.
And thanks to all of you for coming, because none of you needed to come, and you did.
Cheers, Sonja. Thank you, Sonja. Thanks for allowing me to retire.